Good morning, everybody. Welcome to FAFSA Ready Training Program. This is going to be the intro to FAFSA, supporting students to their FAFSA. We're really glad you're here. We're excited to review this presentation and go through the FAFSA in depth. Feel free, there's a chat box and there's a question and answer panel on the bottom of your page, right next to chat. There's a Q&A panel. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to enter them there. After the presentation is done, I will go through and see what I haven't answered through the presentation and try to answer those questions for you live here. If for some reason we are unable or I'm unable to answer that question for you right now, we will go back, find the answer, and our brand new FAFSA Ready Training website that just launched actually 3 seconds ago. We will update the FAQ section to the FAFSA module that you'll find there. And your answer will be there, right? So if I can answer a question now, we'll get the answer for you and put it in the FAQ section of this module. All right. Please make sure everybody stays on mute just so as we record this for future reference. There's not too much background noise. We know that there's a lot of environments, schools, and different things happening. So please be on mute. All the recording for this training and all other trainings will be available on the FAFSA Ready training site. So after this is done, probably about the next business day or two, this training will be up, as well as the PowerPoints, including all the links that we have in this presentation as well. So there's a link or PowerPoint presentation or part of the PowerPoint that you really like. Feel free to wait until like Monday or Tuesday of next week to go ahead and download that PowerPoint and view the presentation again. There will be a survey at the end of this course. So if you're a counselor and you're looking for PD credit, we're looking to work with SED to figure out how we're going to work that. But when we do fill out that survey, so we have your name and information. Also, it's really good for us to get feedback on our content and our presentation and make sure that we're doing what we need to do, which is help you, school counselors, community organizations, people that are helping students through the FAFSA. So please make sure to fill out that survey. I'm Jeff. My name is Jeff. I am the training manager at HESC. I've been here for about 2 years, and I've been really working on this program for about a few months now, really making sure that we have everything we need to help students through the FAFSA. So today in our presentation, we're going to first explain the importance of the FAFSA. Why are students needing to fill out the FAFSA before they go to college? We're going to identify documents needed to fill out the FAFSA. Okay, we're going to describe the elements of the FAFSA. And then we're going to also understand the next steps, right? After the student has completed the FAFSA, what's next for them? So why is the FAFSA important? So the first reason is now in New York State, Governor Hochul just initiated the universal FAFSA completion, right? So every high school senior needs to either fill out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act if they're ineligible for FAFSA, or sign a waiver saying that they understand the benefits of the FAFSA, but they have decided not to apply. So it is now mandated that students do one of those two things, and high schools and councils will be kind of taking a tally of who has done that. The FAFSA is really a key step for financial aid. So as students entering college, states use the FAFSA information. In some cases, I know New York State does. Colleges use the FAFSA information in order to understand the student's situation and build programs and scholarships and packages for that student. So FAFSA is that first kind of key step for most students other than the DREAM Act. And this is really taken into effect with the mandate because over the last few years, I think last year we left $200 million in aid unclaimed, which means that students, for whatever reason, elected not to fill out the FAFSA or DREAM Act application. And because they didn't, they may have decided not to go to school or so have you. And then as the year started, they were like, oh, I kind of want to go now. Whatever situation may be, we left $200 million unclaimed aid. So $200 million could have been used by students to help them go to school, right? And we understand that school is stressful. For every college student, there's a lot of stress, and parents as well, as they are trying to pay for college tuition, room and board, things like that. Completing the FAFSA, we've seen, can increase the chances that students actually attend college and finish college, right? Because that stress is in there. They're able to kind of focus on their studies and not worry about the financial pressure that comes with tuition. So FAFSA can be a great help in completing college for students. Now, how do they get started? Where do they need to get started? So students need the following documents to get started with what is called a student.gov account. They'll need a social security card, or just the number is great. I know some parents don't want to give their card out to their kid and help them bring it to school. I wouldn't do that to my kids. So they at least need the number, tax returns, because there's important information on the tax returns that they're going to need during the FAFSA application, and then current balances of bank accounts and investments. Okay. They'll also need contributor information like the contributor's name, date of birth, um, email address, and social security number. If the contributor does not have a social security number, they'll need their address as well. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as we talk about contributor information, because there's some hiccups in the FAFSA with that we want to explain to you today. All right. So let's talk about who a contributor is, because that may be new for some people. Last year, FAFSA went from the parent model to the contributor model. So contributors are still biological parents or step parents, but they use contributor to kind of determine who that might be. All right. So there is a link here to who counts as a parent, which is that parent wizard. This will help the student determine who their parent is before they get to your office or before they start the FAFSA, so they can create their student.gov account. Because both parents and students need their own student.gov account. All right. So the parent wizard will do what I'm going to walk you through, but this is how they determine who a contributor is. Okay. So if a student's parents are married and they file taxes jointly, only one parent is required to be a contributor. Now, the FAFSA application may say both parents are contributors, but because they are filing jointly, the IRS retrieval tool will take both parents' returns because they've filed jointly. All right, they're married filing jointly. If the student's parents are married and did not file jointly, they are both contributors. Okay, so they both need their own student.gov account. If the student's parents are not married, all right, but they live together, right, so they're still in the same household, both of those parents are contributors for that student, right? Now, if the student's parents are divorced, right, separated, never married, don't live together, the parent who provides more financial support during that 12-month period, that parent will be the contributor, right? So we have some parents that they are no longer together. Whoever provided more support is the contributor. Okay. If the parents both provide the exact same amount of support, all right. So if they figured out we both support, let's just say $50,000 each, whatever contributor has the greatest income, that will be the contributor for the application. Okay. So parents should do a really good job in trying to determine who contributes more money, because if not, the parent with more income will become the contributor. Now, in these cases, in both these cases, the parents are divorced, don't live together. If the parent that has been designated as the contributor has been remarried, okay, so they're now married and they did not file jointly together with their new spouse, that new spouse will also need to be a contributor, because we need that parent who's the contributor and that step parent's information, because they're both in the same house contributing to that student's welfare. Okay. So that's how the parent wizard will work for the FAFSA parent wizard. And that's the parents that need to become contributors and need to create their student.gov account. Now, student.gov accounts are really important. Each student and contributor need their own student.gov account. Last year, I was helping multiple parents that kept saying, I've signed this, I've signed the application, I already did the contributor portion, but they were doing it under their student's student.gov account. So it did not take. The parents need their own student.gov account to do that. Now, some contributors do not have an SSN. So students need an SSN to complete the FAFSA, but they may have contributors who do not have an SSN. So last year, the SSN, if a contributor didn't have an SSN, there was a manual verification process. That process has been paused until further notice. So parents will just need to indicate that they do not have an SSN. They'll need to enter a permanent mailing address. All right. So somewhere they can receive mail. It could be a PO box, but somewhere they can receive mail. And the student should make sure to take a screenshot or write down word for word the address that parent uses. The way that they do matching here, things like that, if the student invites a contributor, but the address doesn't match completely, and when I say completely, I mean if the parent put, Tree Lane, LANE, but the student puts LN, the abbreviation, it will not match. If they put ST period and the student puts ST, it will not match. right? So make sure, and that was going to cause issues in the invitation process for the contributor. So make sure I've told students, take a screenshot of what your parents put, or what your contributor put, have them take a snippet, take a picture of it. So when you go invite them, you put down the exact same information they put down to make sure that that invitation goes through and it connects. Okay. There is additional guidance here for contributors without an SSN, but for right now, FSA has a guidance where contributors without an SSN do not need to send any documentation in to verify right now. Okay, the email box that was there has been deactivated, so it's no longer in use. So there's nowhere to send documentations right now. That is paused until further notice. Well, actually, this is paused for the rest of this year. Okay. Now, when the student goes to complete a FAFSA, they're going to start here at student.gov. Okay. So students can start and edit the application after logging in at student.gov. So even after the student has completed it, this is where they'll go to edit their form or to make adjustments to their form after it's processed. Students need a student.gov account before they start the FAFSA. If a student does not have a student.gov account when they come into your office, they likely will not be able to fill out the FAFSA in that sitting. It takes about 1 to 3 days for the student.gov account to be verified, right? So they can't fill it out until it's been verified. So if a student comes in, or forgot to do it, they can do it, right? But then they'll have to come back and do another appointment to actually fill out the FAFSA, because they'll have to wait until their student.gov account is actually verified. Account creation can only takes about 15 minutes or less. It's pretty quick. It's pretty quick information. What we're going to go through here is the FAFSA prototype. Now, this FAFSA prototype is available for anybody. So if you haven't gone through the FAFSA in forever, or you're a little intimidated by the FAFSA and all the options it has, the FAFSA prototype is what we're going to use today. You can go to it. The link is right there. When the PowerPoint becomes available, go ahead and use that, bookmark it. You can practice doing the FAFSA as many times as you want. Now, the prototype does have some limitations on the options you can actually pick and as you move forward, but you can at least see 90% of the form here. The FAFSA is only in English, so it's not translated in other languages. Okay, just so you guys know. But FSA is working on getting screenshots and other information and resources in other languages for students to go through the FAFSA. So when they'll start a new form here, and that'll take them to their first page of the FAFSA. Now, the first page of the FAFSA will populate with the information from their student.gov account. So if a student goes here and realizes, oh no, my date of birth is incorrect. Oh no, my social security number is incorrect. If that is the case, they'll have to go to FSA and figure out how to do that. I'll give you some contact information for FSA at the end of this presentation, where they can go and figure out how to change that information. But if you notice, we gave those documents at the beginning of the presentation. That's because we see a lot of times where students are entering inaccurate information. They're guessing at what should be there. And with every financial aid application, I'll say this in every presentation for FAFSA, and for TAP and DREAM Act, we want accurate information. We would rather a student wait, make a phone call, send an email, whatever has to be done to get the correct information the first time, as opposed to putting in wrong information and then struggling for weeks and months to change that information. It's better to just get the right information the first time. There's some additional tools here that's helpful during the application in application. So in the top right-hand corner of the form, you see a save button. You can save your application there. Students can save it there. There's also a FAFSA menu. You can see the options there. They can view the status of that application if it's already been submitted. You can also find help in the application. So if you're stuck at any point in time, you click that find help button and it'll have some helpful resources for you for that page of the application. You can also review answers or delete the FAFSA form using that FAFSA menu button. On the bottom of that page, a student will have information needed for the permanent mailing address. They need to enter that address in. Okay, it's really important, especially New York State resident students, that they put in a New York State address and then it's a good address. Okay, FAFSA may send forms. I know TAP, we usually send letters out to students if we need more information. So it's really important to have the right permanent mailing address. The next part will be residency information. So students will need to input the correct state of legal residence. Okay, so the state of legal residence is for this student, New York. For most of our students, it's going to be New York. Okay, if they were born and raised here, they can put, their birth month and year. If they moved here during a certain time of the year, then they'll have to put whatever month and year they when they moved, right? So if they move October 2022, that's when they should put. They don't have to wait a year. They don't have to like put an additional year for actual residency. They can just put the day they actually got and moved into New York. It's really important that students put New York State as their state of residence on the FAFSA. I have seen students who have wondered why and this is for New York State purposes, right? So if they're about to fill out a TAP application later on, um, I've had students that have filled out a TAP application and gotten nothing, and I don't understand why. And when we're able to look into that application, we see that their state of residence was Georgia or Massachusetts or Virginia because that's where their parents lived. Okay. If the state of legal residence does not say New York, the student can file a TAP application fine, but it will not connect, and the TAP application will just be in limbo on a different service somewhere else. Okay. So we need to make sure that students are putting the correct state of legal residence on their application. The next phase of our application goes to consent for federal tax information. So last year when they did the FAFSA simplification, they went from inputting manual federal data to the federal income retrieval tool. Now, this will allow, this consent allows the FAFSA application to connect with the IRS to import student, and then contributors will consent as well, federal tax information into the application. So students will have to put everything in by themselves. Now, students and contributors must consent to the federal tax retrieval tool. If they do not consent to the federal tax retrieval, they will not be eligible for aid. Okay. So even if the student's parents did not file a tax return, they still need to consent. It won't match, it won't have anything to bring in, and they'll still need to manually enter the information, but they have to at least consent to that federal tax information being retrieved through this tool. Okay. So just something aware of, they must consent, students and parents. Last year there was some issues because when they consented, parents didn't know how the FAFSA got their information. So in this year they added an animation to show that yes, we are actually reaching out to IRS. We're getting your data. We're putting it in right now, and then they'll display whether it's successful or not. If it's successful, the student will continue the application and do what we're going to do here. If it's not successful, well, they'll still continue the application, but they'll need those tax returns to input that income data manually. Okay. As we move forward, we go from federal tax retrieval to personal circumstances. Now, this is the information that the FAFSA will use to determine things like eligibility, dependency status, right? So who is the student dependent on? The student may already know that based on their parent wizard, but we want to still see dependence in the application, and then verify which contributors are needed for the application. Okay. If a student has what we call a special circumstance where things have happened where maybe the parents are disabled, passed away, they're in legal guardianship, ward of the court. We'll talk about some more of those later. After the application is processed, institutions or FSA or even state organizations like TAP may reach out to the student or contribute for more information, right? We may need documentation on some of these circumstances to be able to verify that before we continue to process them as a dependent or independent student, okay? So this is what the section looks like as we get into personal circumstances. Student will first need to select their marital status, right? Single, married, remarried, separated, divorced, or widowed. For most high school students, they're going to be saying single. Some students get married right in high school, right? But for 99% of our students, they're going to be saying single. Students will not have a bachelor's degree when they begin, right? So make sure they select that. If a student is a high school senior, they should select first year freshman for their begins the 2025-26 year. What college grade level will they be? Even if they're sophomore by credit, so they've taken AP courses in high school. Even if that's the case, this is their first year of actual college grade level. So they're going to be an incoming freshman, first year freshman. So no matter what college courses they already have, credits already have, first year freshman for all high school seniors. Okay. This is where now we begin to talk about special circumstances, all right? Special cases, unusual circumstances. This is where we start to get into it. Now, this page, students can select all that apply to them that may be considered special circumstances. Now, this does not quantify all special circumstances or reasons why students may not have contact with their parents. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the application, but this is FSA's way of understanding. Here are some concrete, just simple legal ways that we'll know if the student is independent, provisionally dependent, or dependent. And once again, students may be asked to provide documentation to verify those circumstances. So, like the first two are active duty in the U.S. or veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces. I don't know any high school seniors that are going to be serving on active duty or the veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces. So they probably won't be selecting those. Now, we may have students that have children or other dependents that are dependent on them. Okay, so they may have to select that one. If the student, right, is since the age of 13, so after 13, if they're an orphan, meaning they're no living parents, okay, or adoptive parents, if they are a ward of a court, if they were in foster care, right, those students will select those boxes. Those students will become independent. If the student was a legally emancipated minor, right, by their state or by New York State, that would also count as independence. And then if the student was a legal guardianship with someone other than their parents or step parents, as determined by the court. So we have some students that have been in legal guardianship for such a long time that they've actually used a legal guardian on as their contributor. They will not need to do that. If they're in a legal guardianship, that means their biological parents are no longer, or they're not under their biological parents or step parents. So therefore, that student will be also categorized as independent. Now, if none of these apply to the student, that's fine. They can just select none of these apply and move on. So as I mentioned before, those are some questions, but they may not capture all the students that may not have contact or the ability to contact their parents, right? So there are two other questions that will kind of try to capture those students. One is the unaccompanied minor or homeless question, right? So as of or after July 1st, was the student unaccompanied or homeless or self-supporting and at risk of homelessness? So if students select yes, they can just continue. Once again, we need documentation. So for you high school counselors, that might be your McKinney-Vito students, right? The students have the McKinney-Vito letter of at risk of homelessness, or they might be in a shelter. We'll get documentation from that shelter. Okay. The last way to capture students that may be independent is the unusual circumstances question, right? So those are for students that may have had to leave home due to abusive environments, they may be abandoned by their family in refugee status, victims of human trafficking, the parents are incarcerated, um, or otherwise unable to contact their family at risk of harm. Okay, so those students can hit yes there. Now, those situations are a little bit harder to verify, but you work with your institution and New York State to verify. We have documentation we can send in or ask of you to send in for students so that they can be verified as independent or dependent. Once all of this is done, these questions are answered, the student will get a few results. They'll either get their dependent student, which means they'll need to input their parents' information or invite the contributor at the end during the contributor portion. They're an independent student, which means they will not need a contributor for the application to process, or they're provisionally independent student, which means they'll be able to submit the application and process it without a contributor, but the school may determine that they need a contributor in order to complete the FAFSA. So the school may say you're actually a dependent student, or yes, you're independent. Based on that answer and the documentation received, then they'll be able to either finish and get a package, or they'll be required to have a contributor go in and continue the application. Okay. So an important question on that same page, this happened a lot last year, which is why we're kind of hitting it. We're hitting a lot of the pain points from last year and trying to resolve them this year. Under your dependency status, there's a question about direct unsubsidized loan only. This question is, do you want an unsubsidized loan only? Last year, we had a lot of students that said yes because they thought, oh, I want a loan just in case, if I don't get enough Pell Grant, I want a loan as well. Students who select yes to this will bypass the rest of the application and only be eligible for a direct unsubsidized loan. They will not get Pell. Okay, they will not get federal aid. So students should answer no to this. The only students that should answer yes to this are students who may have been categorized as dependent, but know that their parents probably won't. Their parents refuse to add income information. Those students will only be eligible for unsubsidized loan. Okay. As we continue, this is now if the student is dependent. So the rest of the application will be, well, this section will be if the student is dependent, this is what they'll see. This is where they'll determine which parent is the contributor or what people need to become contributors. So I kind of went through and made sure I can flesh out as many answers as possible through this form. But they'll first ask if your parents are married to each other. Then they'll ask if they live together. If you say yes, they live together, it's going to say that they're both contributors. Once again, they're both contributors and they're married filing jointly. Then only one will need to be a contributor. Do one parent provide more financial support? We already talked about that. If it's yes, that parent's a contributor. And then we'll ask if that parent is married. So once again, if the parent that is the contributor is remarried, the step parent will also need to become a contributor if the parents didn't file married filing jointly. Okay. So once we've nailed down that contributor, the student will need to invite that contributor to be a part of the application to fill out their own contributor portion of the application. So here's where they enter the first and last name, date of birth, social security number, and email address. This goes back to what I said. Make sure that students or parents are taking a picture of that student.gov account creation because that is the information that they need to input here. Okay. The name has to be exact, date of birth, social security number should definitely match. Email address needs to match. All those parts need to match. Now, if the student's contributor does not have a social security number, there is a box there that you'll see my parent does not have an SSN. If they click that box, then that address portion will populate and the student will have to put in the parent's address exactly as it appears on the account creation screen. No abbreviations or abbreviations, exactly as it appears. Okay. We also see the additional portions. So they added a link this year where there's additional guidance and recommended workarounds. So as the year goes on, FAFSA does do things to try to create workarounds or they try to improve the application. They look for pain points or things that are broken and try to fix them. We will address those workarounds in this presentation as well. So every presentation that we do will have the most recent up-to-date information given by FSA. You'll see some added information at the end of this presentation as well. But here's a direct link to their guidance and recommended workarounds that they're going to update as the year goes on. Once again, now that the process for verification is paused, there may not be a much need for workaround, but just in case maybe the contributor invite isn't working because of the address mix-up, this is where you'll go for additional guidance for recommended workarounds. So finish up the parent circumstances and personal circumstances. We now go to student demographic questions. So some of these questions are for just research purposes. Some questions have that prefer not to answer. So if you prefer not to answer, you don't have to. But those like race and ethnicity questions, male, female, non-binary, those are prefer not to answer or just research-based questions that have no bearing on your award or your SAI. Okay. When it comes to citizenship status, students must enter a citizenship status. So to be eligible for aid, you need to be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizens. U.S. citizens can just click that. Eligible non-citizens will need to enter their A number, right? So you should have that resident card, that green permanent resident card that has an A number on it, and input that here. If the student is not a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, they're not eligible for federal student aid. Okay, so New York State, we do have the DREAM Act for those citizens, for those students that may not be a citizen or eligible non-citizen. We have an opportunity for them to get state aid, and you can learn more about that during the TAP DREAM Act presentation later on today if you want to sign up for that. If a student has a social security number but isn't a citizen, right? So they have DACA status, things like that. They can still complete the form because the state or college can use that for their own aid purposes, right? And then those students will also check with the financial aid office at the schools or institutions they're going to because they might have special programs for them as well. Continuing on, their parent education status, once again, research purposes. There's really nothing bearing on that, um, the parent killed in the line of duty is a question that is on the application because federal and state agencies do have additional funds for parents killed in the line of duty. So public safety officers such as law enforcement officers, firefighters, rescue squad, ambulance, people like that. There are additional funds, additional scholarships available for students of that caliber. So for in New York State, we have a World Trade Center scholarship for 9/11 students who have parents passed away because of 9/11. We also have merit scholarships and things like that. So um, make sure that students don't miss that question if they are if it's applicable to them. Moving forward, student demographic question. This is when we're talking about high school graduation, right? So students need to be a high school graduate or have an equivalency test. So if they're a high school graduate, we'll talk through how they're going to add that. But if they have an equivalence, we're going to need the type of equivalency test, and we're going to need the state that that was done in. If a student actually went to high school and have a high school diploma, they have to enter the high school on the next page. So they click high school, they can search high school by state and city. The application will populate high schools in that city. Be careful because sometimes based on whatever records are there, the city that you're looking for may not have your high school, right? So you may have to look in other cities or surrounding cities for your high school. If it's not in the actual city, it's probably still be there. But based on the way that the information transferred, we've seen where some high schools don't populate in the actual city that they're in. Students do also have the option to manually enter their high school name. I would never do that because I had the worst time spelling my high school's name. Some students might have the same issue. So I always opt for the automatic entry. And then we get into student financials. So this is where the tax returns for the student are helpful. They're going to enter IRA rollover information if they have any pension rollover. Most students don't have that right now, but they may have current total cash savings and checking account. They may have investments or real estate, and they may have business and investment farms. So some students nowadays, when I was in school, we didn't really do much, but shovel snow and make money off of that. But we have some students nowadays that can make money at an early age doing things like YouTube and TikTok and building games through Roblox and different things like that. So you may have students that have money in their accounts and have to file taxes. This is where they'll enter some of that information from their business or investments or total cash and savings. Okay. As we get closer to the end, we're over the hump now. Students can now search for colleges to enter colleges. Now, FAFSA allows students to enter up to 20 colleges on the application, which is much different than New York State. We only allow one, and we'll talk about why in our TAP presentation if you're interested in that. But FAFSA allows 20 colleges for that student. If a student is trying to go to New York State for school and is trying to fill the TAP application, the student needs to enter at least one New York State school for HESC to receive that information for that TAP application to connect. So if you remember earlier, I said they need to have New York State as their state of residency. They also have to have at least one New York State school listed on this list for HESC to get the information and connect it to that TAP application. If a student by chance has 30 schools or 25 schools or 40 schools they're interested in, and they can't all fit on this application the first time, the student will be able to go back into the application and update the colleges once it processes. So the student should enter their first 20, submit the application, let it process. After that, the student can go back in and update those colleges. When they do that, the original 20 will still receive any federal updates to their records, but the new institutions will also get those records as well, so they can put as many schools as they want to until they have exhausted their school list. So lastly, the student gets to review the application. All right, so this is a chance for the student before it's submitted to make sure everything's accurate, because once they hit continue here, they will not be able to go back and make any changes in their application until the application has processed. Okay, so they should really make sure that everything's accurate and up to date. I'm gonna say it all the time: accurate information is the best. Always put in the most accurate information. Avoid delays, avoid headaches of trying to change things and making phone calls and, oh no, I skipped a digit here. right? A parent the other day that they missed a digit on the birthday and now they're panicking because it didn't connect and something's wrong. So it takes a little bit longer. So make sure you enter the right information. Then the student gets to sign. They hit that button of the agreed to terms and conditions, and then they hit sign. Notice it does not say submit because this student is a dependent student. They can sign the application, but it will not be able to be submitted until the contributor has gone in, done their portion, and then the contributor can sign and submit. Now, contributors can start the application first and then invite the student. In that case, once the student finishes their portion, they would see a sign and submit here instead. Okay, so we signed it, and as you can see, not done yet. Right, each contributor needs their own SSN and needs to go in it and complete the application. Um, if this has been submitted, you can now look for a link. There should be a link to the TAP application. If it's not here, the student can go back to the student.gov account, hit the My Activities, and there should be a link to the TAP application as well. Or the student can just go to HESC.ny.gov and /TAP and go ahead and start that TAP application. We can make sure the invite is sent here. If the student is done and the contributor is about to start their portion of the application, the student should make sure to log out, sign out, because what happens sometimes is the contributor hits that link that we'll show you in a minute, and it automatically signs them in under the student because the student's already signed in. So make sure the student signs out, even close the browser. Incognito windows helps, or private windows helps too, just to make sure that we're not using the student's student.gov account and not the parents, okay? So now we'll move on to the contributor portion. So we've done the student is ready to go, submitted. Now we're gonna start with the contributor portion. The contributor should have the social security card, once again, to make the student.gov account, their tax returns, so they can enter some of that information into their application coming up, record of any child support received, and then the current balances of accounts and investments. So contributors will get this email when the student invites them. They'll see this email and they'll have to log in. So I hit that log in button to begin that process. Once they log in, they'll see an invitation. Do you accept or decline the invitation? Okay. Contributor should hit accept. Right. If they hit decline, another box will pop up saying reconsider declining invitation. Right. Are you going to decline? You sure you are in decline? That is your opportunity to go back if you hit the wrong button. If a parent declines, the student will only be eligible for loans. What happens if a parent accidentally hits decline? I don't exactly know. Okay, they're going to have to go to FSA, to the call center, and sit to get another invitation or reopen the application because they give you 2 chances to accept. And you decline both times. Okay. Now, if you accept, another pop-up will come saying by accepting, you agree to share your information. Okay, and then they can continue. So when they continue, the information from the parent's student.gov account will pre-populate, and the parent will then need to enter the permanent mailing address. The parent will then need to enter to a consent to federal tax information retrieval. Just like the student did, they'll be prompted to consent. Now, if the parent doesn't consent, the student will not be eligible for federal aid. They'll only be eligible for unsubsidized loans. Okay, so the parent declines, or the parent refuses to allow the federal tax information retrieval, then unsubsidized loans only. Okay. If a parent did not file taxes, right, they should still elect to have that tool used. It won't find you, and then you'll just have to enter your data. Okay. That's all. We'll continue with some parent demographics. So marital status. So you should enter your marital status. It should hopefully be the same. So the application for the student said, is the parent married? And they said yes. And then you go here and say no, or the student says no, and then you go in here and say yes. It's going to be conflicting information. It's going to cause issues on the application. Okay. And then we'll enter the parent's state of legal residence. So New York State may use this information to verify parent's state of legal residence. For us, if a student is dependent, they need to be a New York State resident. The parent needs to be a New York State resident. So if the parent's a Georgia resident, then the student for New York State is a Georgia resident, right? So that's something we may use sometimes. Also use the date of residency, the date that the parent moved here, or the parent's date of birth if they're a lifelong resident. Now we get into any federal benefits. So now we're going to go into the bigger portion for the contributor, is that financial portion, okay? any federal benefits that the parents receive should be listed here. So earned income credit, federal housing assistance. Now, when it comes to free or reduced lunch, when they introduced this last year, they realized, or maybe they forgot, that some families get free and reduced lunch based on county. Right. So some families, if it was just based on income alone, would not be eligible for free and reduced lunch. But because that school district as a whole gets free and reduced lunch, they would click in this option. Parents should only click this option. Contributors should only pick this option if they would be eligible for free and reduced lunch, or they receive free and reduced lunch without the district-wide eligibility. Okay, so if they would have been approved without the district-wide approval, then they should select this. If not, they should not select free and reduced lunch. Okay, and then you can see with any other federal benefits that they received. Okay, if they get none other than earned income credit, stuff like that, they should select none of these apply. Now we go to family size. We do the academic financial aid based on the prior taxes. So for 25-26, we are using 23 tax returns. Okay, FAFSA uses it and New York State uses it. A lot can happen in 2 years, right? So if by chance the family size is different now than it was during the 2023 tax return years, families should indicate that now. So say, for instance, another sibling was born. They've adopted a child or two. A cousin is now living with them, whatever it may be. The parents should select yes and then enter whatever the number is later on, okay? If there's more than one student in college, right? So contributors enter how many students are actually in college in that family. So if I'm going to college and my son is going to college, I'm still going to select one, right? Because I can't include myself. But if all three of my sons are in college, I would select three. I would enter three. Okay. And then we go into the financial information, right? So annual child support received. Now, there is a breakdown on the tax return. There's a great counsel tool that's on our FAFSA Ready training site. If you go to FAFSA Ready, HESC.ny.gov/FAFSA Ready, if you click on the FAFSA module, under resources, there is a 25-26 counselor resource that breaks down exactly how you should be looking at parent assets and what lines of the tax return should be inputted into this section. Okay. So assets such as cash, net worth of investments, that's net worth. So if your investment, if you've made $100,000 off investments, but you're in debt in those investments $70,000, your net worth is going to be 30, right? Same thing for businesses or investment farms, right? If you're in debt over your business, so say for instance, you made $100,000, but you're in debt 110, you'll be in the negative there. So you won't put a negative, you'll just put zero. So it's the net worth, not what you've gained, but your net worth of investments, real estate, businesses, and investment farms. They are no longer capping the businesses. So before it used to be businesses over 100 people or with over a certain amount of individuals employed. That is no longer the case, right? So those small family businesses also need to put that net worth, right? Once again, that's a 25-26 counselor breakdown for you in the FAFSA Ready training under the FAFSA module. Now, when it comes to IRA rollovers, you want to make sure that you're inputting the correct data from your tax returns in there. So IRA rollover, that's if you have any IRA that was unqualified that was dispersed to you, okay? Or a pension rollover that was dispersed to you, right? So only put things that are rolled over. There's a certain line in the tax return that is for rollovers only. There's another line for distributions, which you'll have to put in a different section. You'll indicate if the parent used the earned income credit, and then any college grants that were given that you got a tax form for, and then foreign earned income. All right. So once again, that breakdown gives you exactly what line in the tax return, but there's a line for each one of those items on the tax return that you can input there. After the contributor has entered that information in, we're almost done here. This is the home stretch. They can review any information they entered into the application. I would suggest review it just once or twice to make sure. And then the contributor is able to sign, and since they're the last contributor or the only contributor needed, you'll see the button says sign and submit. So now they're able to sign the application and submit it to FAFSA for processing. Okay. So once everything's entered, you'll see this. So now Ray can go in and they can view the status of the application, right? So they can track and manage it. see what's going on with it. They can also wait 3 to 5 days, go back in, let it process, and now make adjustments to their application. But now it is in FAFSA's hand. Now, you may encounter different things that I didn't talk about, or may have specific questions for FSA. FSA has really done a good job this year of beefing up their resources for students. So last year they were kind of overwhelmed by the need that students had. So they made a concerted effort to really beef up their communications and support. So this year, I think they hired, I want to say, in the upper hundreds of new call center reps to help field calls. So if you need to call FSA, they have a new call center line right here, and the information for that is available here at the time it's available. They've also really beefed up their interpretation services. So if you click that link, it will go to the languages that they have interpreters for, and you can call into the call center and request and get those specific languages to interpret. If you're an English speaking person or student or counselor, please do not use the interpreter sources, right? They are really necessary for those that do not speak English. So please, and there's limited resources for those interpreters. So please use the main call center line. The call center line has been beefed up to the point where I think they were waiting like 30 minutes last year for a call center rep, and now it's like 30 seconds. So really beefed that up. So now I think that's all the additional information I have. I'm going to open it up to any questions. I don't see any in the chat, but are there any questions that I can answer today? All right. If there are no questions, if you have questions later on, feel free to reach out to pre-college services at HESC.ny.gov. We have people there that can help reach out, send you in the right direction. Also, make sure to visit FAFSA Ready. We have a bunch of resources and tools and how-to videos on FAFSA, TAP, and other programs, things like that. So please feel free to look at those resources. There's a survey coming up. So once you click out of this box or end the meeting, there was a survey that will populate. We'd really love your feedback, as it will help us build a better course for counselors and people that are helping students with the FAFSA. And with that, I say thank you.